Good morning. My name is Mark Levine, and I am the Deputy Director of your New York State Association of Counties. On behalf of our President, Jack Marin, and our Executive Director, Stephen Aquario, and our entire Board of Directors, I want to thank you for joining us this morning for a webinar devoted to providing an update on the 2020 census. A lot has happened with the census over the past week, so this webinar was scheduled with perfect timing. And we are fortunate to have three speakers that can talk with authority about the changes that have happened in this time. We want to acknowledge New York Counts 2020, the statewide coalition network that's done so much to assist counties and other municipalities this year to help promote a complete count. As many of you know, Coalition Advisor Jeff Weiss has convened several regional county meetings with Jeff Baylor and the Census Bureau, and we welcome their ongoing efforts to achieve a full count. We are all working together for the same goals here, which is to get as many people in New York counted in the census as we possibly can. To learn more about New York Counts 2020, visit their website, newyorkcounts2020.org. And at the bottom of their website, you can sign up for daily emails. New York counties, I'm proud to say, have historically played an active role in encouraging residents to respond to the US Census every 10 years. This year's census is behind schedule in New York and many other states, but New York is right up there in ranking and because of COVID-19 pandemic. But in the time remaining between now and September 30th, we all need to do whatever we can to help promote a complete count in New York State. If you have questions during this presentation, please type them into your question panel on your webinar dashboard. We will take up those questions after the speakers finish their presentations. Our first speaker this morning is Jeff Baylor. Jeff is the New York Regional Director for the US Census Bureau. We have partnered with Jeff on several workshops over the course of the last 3 years, and we are pleased to have him join us this morning. Jeff, we appreciate you lending your time and expertise for our member county officials this morning. Jeff.
Thank you so much, Mark. It's an absolute honor to be here. I appreciate the opportunity to share the latest updates with you, let you know what's going on regarding the census, because it's far from over. This is really our crunch time operationally. This is where we need to be at our best, and we look forward to working with you. Let me first start off just by saying thank you. You know, as of yesterday, 58.8% of the numbers that came out yesterday at 3 o'clock, 58.8% self-response rate. So again, the percentages of households that have self-responded, gone online, called it in over the phone, filled it out on paper. And to me, that's amazing. And I know people want to compare it to how we did in 2010 or to other states, but other states didn't experience what New York State experienced at the beginning of census data collection back in mid-March. This was the epicenter of the COVID-19 pandemic. And just some of the wonderful things that our partners, many who are on this call, had planned, unfortunately, they were unable to do. And we all know that bringing people together, especially in those communities that are fearful of federal government or really don't understand what a census is about, why it's so important, we know bringing them together to educate them, to motivate them, and then to give them the resources right then and there to fill it out is one of the best tools and strategies we have to get a complete and accurate count. And unfortunately, we couldn't do that. And while everyone would have understood if you would have just hit the pause button, our partners did not. All of you did not. You re-engineered yourselves to social media events, census happy hours, and coffee mornings, and different things like that virtually, where you could do it safely and still get the word out. So I wanted to start off with just saying thank you. We are updating our our self-response rates on a daily basis. That you can see the response rate mapper at 2020census.gov. CUNY has an awesome tool out there. If you just Google hard to count maps 2020, you'll see CUNY's tool that they put together that I love. I use that every day as well. But we update this on weekdays now at 3 p.m. So every weekday at 3 p.m. you can see how your your community is doing. If moving to the next slide, you'll see I wanted to show you by county just exactly how we're doing and compared it to what the final self-response rate was in 2020. And I want to stress final. Even though we're knocking on doors right now, self-response rates will continue to increase. And I'll talk a little bit about that later. But here you can see how we did. New York State, 64.6% back in 2010 was the final self-response. 66.5 was the final national self-response. So we have some room to grow without a doubt, but we also have some time to do it. All right, look, moving to the next slide. So as Mark mentioned already, and you're aware of all the news that came out earlier this week, that the announcement was made that both self-response and knocking on doors, basically all data collection, would end at the end of September. And so I just wanted to share with you what the original schedule was prior to COVID-19 and what it is now as a result of the latest announcement. August 9th was the official start date for knocking on doors. We have already started. In every office throughout New York State, we have a total of 21. We have started knocking on doors. Operationally, we were told if we're ready to go, we can go ahead and do that. So I'm going to talk about NRFU here in a minute. The other thing I want to mention, service-based enumeration, those dates are not changing. We're moving forward with September 22nd through the 24th. This is where we're either visiting or collecting administratively from each mobile food van, every soup kitchen, every homeless shelter, as well as conducting our homeless count, where we go out early morning hours to count those who are experiencing homelessness who aren't staying in a shelter. Next slide, please. So let me talk a little bit about non-response follow-up and what it looks like. Again, we've already started knocking on doors, even though the official start date is August 9th. We are making it mandatory that our census staff, anytime they're in public, whether it's a partnership specialist, whether it's a census taker, whether it's someone who's out there just helping with recruiting or whatever it may be, all census employees are required to wear a mask, both in the office when they're unable to socially distance, as well as whenever they're out in the public, regardless of what the local policies may be. We are making it mandatory nationwide for every census taker to wear a mask, and we're providing masks and hand sanitizer. They also have to complete a COVID-19 training as part of their virtual training that they take before they're free to go into the field and begin their assignments. This includes things like how to wear your mask, reminders on washing your hands frequently, knock on the door, and as soon as you knock on the door, back up 6 feet so you can practice social distancing when you're out there interviewing in the communities, not to share materials, hand things back and forth, those kind of things. So they must complete that before they're released. In addition, the census takers, they can easily be identified by their badge. It'll be a photo ID with an expiration date, as well as a U.S. Department of Commerce watermark or water seal on their particular badge. As the picture shows, they'll be carrying a bag, and they'll also be collecting the information on their smartphone. It's something new in 2020. We will be collecting information directly on the smartphone. All right, next slide, please. So one of the things that we see an uptick in self-response when we begin non-response follow-up, and you'd be thinking, well, why self-response if you're knocking on doors? Because for many of the households who don't answer, at a first attempt, we leave a notice of visit. Actually, all attempts, anytime someone doesn't answer, we leave a notice of visit. And here on the screen, you can see what that looks like. The front is English, on the back it's Spanish. The census taker writes in their census ID, that 12-digit unique identifier. So when they go online, they can use that to fill it out. They don't have to, but it's certainly there. And as you can see, it also gives them the my2020census.gov, as well as a toll-free telephone number and for TDD. We have seen over the decade, through the many tests that we have done, that self-response typically gets an uptick at the time we start knocking on doors, because you can see it mentions in here that we'll be back in a few days to try and collect this information again, or you can fill it out online right now or call it in over the phone. And we have seen some pretty, anywhere from 5 to 10%. Now, granted, these were tests, but 5 to 10% self-response rate increases at the time we started knocking on doors. I want to stress mobile questionnaire assistance. We have been seeing these really prove to be an amazing event to get hard to count communities to self-respond. I'll give you a couple examples. I was at a food bank at a church in Queens last Saturday. I think they feed over 3,000 households, and we had a staff of about 6 census response representatives with iPads walk the line and stop and talk to every individual to see if they filled out the census yet. And if they have, fill it out right then and there. So we're going to a lot of food distribution sites, outdoor festivals, drive-in movies, you know, to say a message before the movie starts, and then, you know, during intermission or even before, invite people to come up to fill out their census. So this is a resource that's free to use. You just need to let us know when and where, and I'll provide information on how you can reach out to us. If you don't know your partnership specialist yet, I'll give you the general line. You can reach out to us. But this is something we'll continue to do, even though we're knocking on doors. It's a great opportunity, especially in hard to count areas. And we want to
Jeanette, have we lost Jeff?
We lost his audio. He is logged in. Jeff, we lost your audio. We may need you to call back in and reset your audio.
In the meantime, while Jeff is calling back in, I want to remind you that if you have a question for Jeff from the Census Bureau, for Rebecca from from Long Island, or Pravina Raghavan from the New York State Empire State Development. If you have questions for our presenters, you can put those in the dashboard, in the question panel in the dashboard throughout the presentation, and we will get to those questions after the 3 presenters have had a chance to go. I believe we have Jeff back. Jeff, are you with us?
Yep.
Okay.
Can you hear me okay?
Great, thanks.
Yeah, and sorry about that. Unfortunately, our area was affected by the storms that rolled through a couple of days ago, and our internet and cellular is going in and out. So I do apologize. But if you can move to the next slide, please. And just to kind of wrap it up, you know, what are some things that are going on, or things that you could do? So right now we're in the middle of our email campaign. We're sending emails out to households in low responding tracts. Now, these aren't just non-responding households. These are to any household within that tract where we have an email address. This is data that we would have collected throughout the decade. Just again, reminding people. So it is possible that someone who's filled out their census already gets this email. If they, you know, raise that to your attention, just let them know there's nothing they need to do about that. Paid media, you'll see, if you haven't already, we started showing commercials. This is one of our heaviest paid media weeks, and we're showing our staff with PPE to get the word out, to let people know there are census takers that are out there or will be out there very soon knocking on your door. They're currently planning, headquarters staff, a 7th mailing. Basically, we have some leftover questionnaire packages, and it's somewhere above 15 million, if not a little bit more from what I understand. I don't know a lot of the details yet, other than they're sending them out to non-responding households in some of the tracts with the lowest self-response. Certainly, as we get more information, I will certainly share that with all of you. This was something that was scheduled to start in September. They are now moving it up to start ASAP. So we hope to know early next week exactly when those questionnaires will go out. What you can do, let your community members know there's still time to self-respond. Yes, April 1st has passed, but that's only the reference point. People can still go online at 2020census.gov. They can fill it out over the phone, or if they still have their paper questionnaire, they can mail it or fill it out and mail it back in. We're also still hiring on 2020census.gov/jobs. So if you know of anyone who may be interested, We are going to continue to hire and train people all the way through August. Our goal is basically to have every device in the hands of someone who wants to work in their community. So previously, under the old schedule, we would have done, 2 weeks of regular training, and that would have been it. There would have been no need to do replacement training. Now we want to make sure that every device is being used. So we are going to plan replacement trainings all the way through the end of August. So if you know of anyone who may be interested in working, even part-time, you get to choose your own schedule. Please have them apply at 2020census.gov/jobs. Another message you can share with your community is it is okay. It's safe to open up your door to census takers. Every census taker takes the oath of confidentiality, meaning they will be in prison up to 5 years, fined up to $250,000 if they release any information that they collect. So people need to understand the same Title 13 law that's in place that protects the self-response also protects census takers and the information they collect. So it's important to know that no matter how you respond, your data is protected under federal law. Host an MQA. Again, reach out to us. Let us know if you're interested. It could just be some outdoor event. It could be a neighborhood festival that's going on, and we can set up a table. Our staff have chairs and tables and banners, and they'll bring their devices. And they'll work the crowd if that's what you prefer, or they'll just stay stationary in an area, and you can direct people up to have them fill out their census right then and there. And then the last thing I'll mention, please support your local SBE operation. Make sure if you haven't reached out, if you work directly with a mobile food van, a soup kitchen, a homeless shelter, and you haven't spoken yet with one of our partnership specialists, please let us know. We want to make sure we have your information. We're going to start calling at the end of this month. At the end of August, we're going to start reaching out to mobile food vans, soup kitchens, homeless shelters to see, do they have the ability to provide us administratively the data, or would they prefer we actually send our census takers on one of those days, the 22nd, 23rd, or 24th, to actually conduct a count. And then on the last slide, I just want to point out again, if you haven't gotten in contact with your partnership specialist, call our partnership line. We'll give you the name, phone number, and email of your local partnership specialist to make sure they provide you the resources or get you set up for a mobile questionnaire assistance event, whatever you would like to do in your community to ensure you get a complete and accurate count. But again, let me finish where I started. Just say thank you again for all of your hard work. Your tireless efforts over the past couple of years clearly has made a difference, and I look forward to the rest of our conversation. Thank you.
Hey, Jeff, thank you very much. And let me thank you. I know that this has been a challenging couple of years for you and your colleagues at the US Census, trying to do the best you can to get a complete and accurate count. So, and you have been a great partner to NYSAC and a great partner to our counties and a great partner to all of the folks in New York who are trying very hard to get a complete count. So thank you, Jeff, for everything that you are doing.
Thank you.
Our next speaker is Rebecca Sannon. Rebecca is the president, CEO of the Health and Welfare Council of Long Island. They work tirelessly with Nassau and Suffolk counties on a range of health and human service programs. And they are the lead nonprofit agency on Long Island, working with both of these counties to promote a complete count. Rebecca has been a speaker for NYSAC before. She has presented to our Standing Committee on Intergovernmental Affairs. Rebecca, we appreciate you coming back and lending your expertise and your energy to us today for this webinar on an update on the census. Rebecca.
Thank you, Mark, and thank you to everybody at NYSAC for the critically important work that you're doing in these difficult times. Thank you, Jeff, for all the work you're doing in terms of getting an accurate count across New York State. And I want to just say to everybody on the call right now, of course, we are still all managing the impact of COVID-19. And I think that it's really timely that we're having this webinar today, because we know that with the challenges with aid to state and localities, making sure we get every single dollar we deserve here in New York is more important than ever. So I'm happy to talk to you today about why the census matters, to talk about COVID-19 and the census, some of the challenges that we still have to a complete count, our response rates. Jeff actually already shared with you, but I'm going to share with you again quickly some new important dates and some tools and messaging that I think will be helpful to you in terms of engaging your constituency. Next. So the 2020 census is about money and power. It will also set the stage for New York's recovery from COVID-19, and I think this is such an important message to continually be pushing out. You know, we all saw the pictures and the devastation to our hospital systems, to our medical systems through COVID-19. And the reality is that Medicaid is one of the biggest programs that is funded using census data, and our hospitals and our emergency services rely on census data for their funding formulas. And so part of our effort towards recovery has to be making sure we get an accurate count. The census has guided federal funding distributed to New York State in fiscal year 2017. Look at that number. It's pretty significant, right? You know, when we talk about the dollars that we can bring into the state, these are not small dollars, and they affect everything that we care about. You can go to the next slide. Thank you. Everything that we care about, and that includes Medicare and Medicaid. It includes the what I call safety net programs like SNAP and Meals on Wheels and WIC programs that help feed our neediest families. It includes our health insurance, our state children's health insurance program. It includes, and something I think it's really important as counties to be aware of, you know, it really includes money to your local schools. That's something that we find when we do our message testing. A lot of folks don't know that our schools rely on census data in terms of funding that they get. So when you have communities that are not counted, what that means is that you're perpetuating inequity, right? Because it means that schools in under-resourced communities are not going to get the dollars that they need in order to provide the best opportunities for children. Next, there we go. So I think it's really important to remember that as part of the messaging, just as it has been since the beginning, it really is important to talk to folks about the fact that this is a 10-year funding precedent. So if you don't count folks today, then when we have, you know, a hurricane or a natural disaster or another public health emergency in the next 10 years, we're not going to have the resources that we need to recover. We're also not going to have the resources that we need to be able to maintain the quality of life that folks rely on and count on their counties to provide. And so census sets a 10-year funding precedent for everything that impacts children, everything that impacts education, healthcare, nutrition, but very much also our infrastructure and resiliency. Next. And I think it's really important to remember that the CARES Act used census population data to determine funding eligibility. You know, we received $7.5 billion in aid through the CARES Act, and census data is used for lots of funding formulas that drive dollars to New York State. Next. The census also determines how many representatives each state has in the House of Representatives, and of course I don't need to tell any of you that, but I want to remind you that if New York sees just 0.6% undercount, we stand to lose another two seats. And I think, you know, without saying anything that sounds political, I think there's a lot of concern right now about New York State's representation in Washington, D.C. when it comes to things like our, you know, state and local tax deductions and other issues that really impact New York State very significantly. So we need to make sure that our voice is represented in Washington, D.C., and a complete count in 2020 will mean that New York will have its fair share of representation in government. Next. So we already face very significant challenges to a complete count in New York State. You know, there was a lack of federal funding. You know, when you look back at 2010 and the investments that were made, it's been very different in 2020. State funding, I know you're going to hear about in a few minutes, but you know, there hasn't been a significant amount of state funding that has flowed to counties to do this really important work. There's a digital divide, we know, both in terms of access and literacy. Certainly COVID-19 has shown that to us in an even greater way when we look at children trying to engage in remote learning. And this is the first census where there's a digital option where folks can go online and complete the census, and that there's benefits to that, but there's also challenges in terms of making sure that people do it and do it accurately. Fear and distrust of government is at a high right now in many ways, and so there's a fear of sharing data, telling people where you live, who lives with you. The anti-immigrant sentiment and climate of fear that we've seen in this country means that lots of folks are afraid to fill out the census because they're afraid of scrutiny and potential deportation. And we know, Jeff referenced Title 13, and we know that there are protections in place, but, we also know that that fear drives behavior. And so we have to work very hard to overcome that fear. There's a lack of affordable housing in New York State, and that means lots of folks live multiple families in single dwelling units. So the Census Bureau doesn't know about them, right? So lots of folks are not going to hear from the Bureau because they're not in a legally registered house, or there's many more people living in a house than the Bureau is aware of. So it's really important to think about those areas in your communities and say, how can I do some engagement and let people know that they can call the Bureau and say, I'm here, this is where I live, and I want to be counted, because that will drive dollars into your communities. And quite frankly, the lack of understanding about how much the census impacts, I think, has been, the biggest barrier that I've seen, and we've been working really hard for 2 years to get the message out. Folks do not realize that the census impacts their schools and their funding for programs and their roads. I find that people love to complain about potholes. I know my friends in county government feel that way as well. So, because of that, I think it's really important to understand that we have to educate folks everywhere we can about all the impacts. COVID-19 has now exacerbated the challenges that we face and has created new ones. Obviously, social distancing removed the opportunity for so much of the outreach that was planned with trusted messengers in our communities, but also illness and fear and grief and economic disaster have ravaged many parts of our state, hitting communities of color really hard, and historically underrepresented and undercounted communities the hardest. And so, what that means is that when you're grieving and when you're worried about how you're going to put food on the table, the first thing you think about doing is not completing the census. So we have a responsibility to figure out, how do we make it relevant for constituents who are dealing with so much. And I really feel very strongly that part of that message is giving people a sense of agency, reminding them that, one of the things that they can do to impact the future of their community and the future of their family is to make sure they complete the census. Next. Jeff went over this with you, but I just wanted you to see the response rates statewide. If you look at the national average, New York is a little bit behind the national average, but I think what's more important to look at is drilling down into counties, that there's variability. There are counties, for example, with 17.5% response rate to date, and others that are closer to 70%. So it's really important that we make sure that every single county is adequately counted to drive the dollars that you need in your counties to provide the services and the quality of life that your constituents depend on. And quite frankly, we all benefit if New York State gets an accurate count overall. So it's really important that we work on this together. Next. I think, Jeff mentioned the logistics, but, this has changed. And I think it's really, certainly it's not in, not blaming anybody, but I think it's been challenging for folks that there have been shifting logistics. And so it's just important to understand that right now, September 30th is the current Selfresponse deadline. We did a webinar just this week with Ian Hull, who's the Deputy Regional Director, and talked about this. Certainly we know that there are folks advocating to extend the deadline to October 31st. But right now we need to plan as though, all hands are on deck right now, because the time frame is very short. Next. So to get out the count, there's some talking points that I think are really important. The first one is, now more than ever, it is critical that we complete the 2020 census. It's always been important, but now that we are facing the impact of a public health crisis and the economic devastation, filling out the census is what we need to do to harden our resiliency and really make sure we have a resilient future in New York State. We talk a lot in our work about being safe, being home, and being counted. So encouraging folks during the pandemic to make sure that they realize this is something they could do from the comfort of their home, observing social distancing. Disaster recovery depends on an accurate census data, and this is really important to continuously talk about, because I think it's really relevant for folks right now. And part of, as all of you know, part of the work in doing this outreach is about messaging that resonates. And right now, folks are really struggling with the impact of the pandemic on their lives. And so making sure they understand that things like health insurance and hospitals and disaster recovery and our infrastructure is all impacted by being counted. 10 minutes affects the next 10 years. And it really doesn't even take 10 minutes necessarily. But when you think about the next 10 years, you're talking about 2030. We need to do everything we can to secure dollars for our region and our state so that we get what we need for the next 10 years. And just that it's, we sort of joke in my office, but we say that completing the census online or by phone is safe, secure, and sanitary, which, you know, I think is a silly way of communicating to people that this is something we need them to do and that it's something they can do safely. Next. So get out the count. So there's things that you can do, certainly mentioning that the census is going on when you host remote meetings. There really shouldn't be anything that you're doing right now where you don't mention the census. We need to do everything we can to uplift this message, especially because we know that so many people are not being touched because they're not out in communities the way that they used to be. You know, everybody who's ever run for office knows phone banking and text messaging and traditional campaigning methods are very effective. So getting folks to do that in your counties really can be helpful. Writing a letter to the editor of local papers. You know, people are actually reading newspapers. Folks are home more right now, are reading newspapers. You know, before we used to joke that people didn't really want to read anymore and everything was Twitter based, but people are reading, so letters to the editor are powerful. We've asked people to do all sorts of social media campaigns, like posting a census selfie when they've finished completing the census and tagging their friends to do the same. Changing your profile picture for your county to an I Count Facebook frame so that folks can see every time they look at you that this is something they need to be thinking about. And there's lots of other things that you can do, but a lot of it is traditional campaigning methods are very effective. Next. So for our government partners, we had built a checklist encouraging folks to display messages and banners on all web pages and client-facing sites and portals. That includes if you have, for example, the outdoor signs that school districts and fire departments typically have, making sure that there's messaging on there about the census, using communications to amplify the message of how important it is for the census to be completed, highlighting information, as Jeff mentioned, for constituents about how to apply for census employment, strategizing regarding events and opportunities to spread the word about the census is an important civic duty. So we are having events. You know, we've all returned to our communities outdoors and in many other ways now. And so there are opportunities in person to communicate this. Having kiosks to facilitate response to the census in your town halls or your city halls or your county buildings and client-facing offices where essential services are provided. Having any constituent affairs staff that you have trained in messaging about Census 2020, so when folks call in for questions or for information, they can also hear about the census. And that goes for your message machines as well. If you have messages and you know machines that you leave on during the weekend, making sure that they end with "please complete the census." Looking at the census rates, the Bureau does an excellent job of updating response rates by tracks. You can look at them and say, you know, in your jurisdiction, who are the key leaders in those tracks and help them to be trusted messengers and ambassadors in the community. We have war rooms in Nassau and Suffolk County to check response rates in real time and get a better sense and target undercounted communities. Discuss the census at all of your board meetings, at all of your you know, county addresses, public addresses, certainly holding online public events to promote civic engagement and 2020 census participation, promoting the census via voting polls, canvassing, and voter registration efforts, and including census information in all communications, whether it's recycling calendars, local licensing, consumer affair mailings, whatever it is that you send out, making sure you're including this information. Next. And also looking at your, you know, in your communities, your doctor's office, your grocery stores, your pharmacies, your police, your faith leaders, your school districts. There are ways in which people are engaging in their communities every day, and census material needs to be part of that. We, on Long Island, for example, with our COVID testing, we included census material in the kit that people take home with a thermometer and with their hand sanitizer after they've been tested for COVID. We have information about how they can go online and complete the census as part of their recovery. Next. And so just a couple quick little messaging points, you know, even from far apart, we're in this together. Complete the 2020 census for New York State, just 10 minutes impacts our region for the next 10 years. Ways to help your community in crisis: practice social distancing, practice good hygiene, and complete the census. And be home, be safe, be counted. Next. So just some sample flyers that we've created. We, want to really be communicating to folks that we can't afford to miss out on getting an accurate count because it funds everything that we care about. We've worked really hard to get the information out about the phone opportunity in 14 languages, because what we found is that folks who don't speak English and who might feel afraid to complete the census because of immigration status often feel safer doing it when they're speaking to somebody in their own language on the other line. So we've been really encouraging that as well. Next. So this is, one of the flyers that we've been distributing, which has all the different numbers for folks so they can look up what they need. Next. And again, this is another flyer just about how important it is to be part of the effort to build a brighter future for our region and for New York State. And anything that we've created, obviously you are welcome to take and put your own logos on. We have a COVID toolkit for census. You're welcome to take all the materials that we have on our website and use them. They're not proprietary. The goal is to get New York State counted. Next. That might be it. Nope, there we go. So if you need more information, that's my contact information, and I'm happy to assist you in any way that I can. I want to remind you that, just this week we counted 3 months till the November election, and people are ramping up efforts around the election and that process, and so we can't allow the census to get muted in that conversation. It is so critically important for New York State that we get every dollar that we need to recover, especially now and now more than ever. So thank you so much for the opportunity to share with you today.
Thank you, Rebecca, very much for your time, your energy, and your expertise. Listen, 10 minutes impacts the next 10 years. There are so many things that Rebecca said in there that can be used to help promote the filling out the census in your communities. And I also want to thank Rebecca, because take her up on her offer to share the materials that she's created. So those materials are very good materials. If you haven't created materials in your county or community yet, or if you need to supplement the materials you've created in your communities, then take a look at what she has created, and you don't have to recreate the wheel. And the census also has a lot of good material. So let's do what we can to share the best practices that are out there to help promote this complete count in New York. I can't say that enough. And I want to thank everybody. There's a number of questions that have already come in on the questions panel on the webinar dashboard. If you have a question, please put that into the question panel on your webinar dashboard. Finally, I would like to introduce our third speaker this morning. She is Praveena Raghavan. Praveena is the Executive Vice President for the Division of Small Business and Technology Development at the Empire State Development. They are the state agency taking the lead on census grants for counties. Praveena, thank you very much for stepping up at late notice to join us this morning to give our members an update on what's happening at the state level.
Well, thank you, Mark, for allowing us this opportunity, and thank you, Jeff and Rebecca. You've had some very powerful statements, and I agree. 10 minutes for 10 years is what we need to do. As with everyone, we are really looking to have every New Yorker counted. We can go to the next slide. Part of it is, somebody had mentioned, I think, Rebecca, about state funding. We've already pushed $34 million through their state agencies, but as you know, we've been fighting through the COVID pandemic alongside with all of you, and we've suffered a 14% loss in state revenue, and obviously we have not gotten any help from the federal government on our budget. So in a new world that has happened since March, we're now going to advance $10 million to localities. I know this process had started before, stopped due to the pandemic, so we are restarting it. Everyone, every county and and the 4 designated cities should have gotten an email. If you haven't, I will give you the email address to let us know, but we are calling. You should have gotten an email about your revised census plan being due. The deadline for them to come in is August 10th. We know we've already gotten questions from people. Can I get it in sooner? Of course, you can also get it in later. We are just trying to get the revised plans in so that we can get your money out as quick as possible. You will have also gotten an award letter in your email boxes saying that you can start incurring costs from July 31st until September 30th. As you heard, September 30th is the last day for the census response, so the timing is for that. And to get the final 10% of your money, the report deadline is due November 30th. We're just trying to get reporting statistics on how the money was spent and where it went. And I will stress this is to reach hard to count communities, and incorporating all the phase 1 and phase 3, 4 guidelines on social distancing. We have revised a little bit the eligible activities because we know you can't do as much in person. I'm going to have the next 3 slides are pretty quick, but they're things that you've heard about: doing local billboard advertisements, social media advertisements, getting in flyers, creation of television or radio ads or newspaper ads. I will also stress libraries are still counted. Previous slide, just so quickly, and then I'll thank you. Libraries are still part of it. They did not have to go through the nonprofit allocation list. So if you have a library, you can put them in. There is no approved nonprofit. Each of you have also gotten your approved nonprofits. 75% of the grant funding allocation must go to approved nonprofits. That is still there. You should have a list of approved nonprofits. If you don't have your list or have questions about it, please contact us and we can walk you through at info@census2020grant.ny.gov. Next slide, please. Here's more ideas: placing ads in ethnic press, phone banking, text banking, providing brochures to food pantries, multilingual outreach materials, also creating and posting other census-related signage. We've heard that some people want to do wraparound buses, wraparound ice cream trucks. These are all eligible expenses. Next slide, please. As you can see, it's pretty much the same from before, that we're really looking for getting purchases of goods and service that can actually help you support getting the word out to your constituency, especially the hard to count population. So even if you have some creative ideas that we have not listed, we are open to them. We ask you to put them in your budget and put it in the cost so that we can get there. Just a reminder, there is also administrative rate with these grants. It's still 5% of the census grant funding. Next slide, please. We did change some stuff, so this should actually be one of the feedback that we got is some of the limitations we had previously. We've decided to increase or get rid of so that we can allow for more outreach quickly, especially given the current circumstances. So we're removing the digital media cap of 5%. Given that social distancing protocols, digital media is critical, so there is no cap on that. We're also allowing the purchase of promotion items only for PPE or personal protective equipment. So if you need to buy face masks, hand sanitizers, or gloves with or without the census logo, that is allowable under this. And then increasing the aggregate amount for purchases of computers or mobile devices or iPads, still with $500 limit per item, but up to $20,000 in excess. So that's moved up from $2,500 to $20,000. Next slide, please. Ineligible items stayed the same as it's the purchase or lease of operational software. That's not including the lease of maybe a mobile plan for the equipment that you buy. Any political electoral activities, voter registration, any other types of awards, gifts, gift cards, trophies, and then audit services. Next slide, please. This is the same as before. Entertainment, religious activity, alcohol are not eligible items. Any expenses occurred prior to July 31st will not be counted. And then any type of overhead expenses that like interest, taxes, or penalties would not be considered eligible. Next slide. So I ran through that. That is all on the ESC website as well as the governor's census website. But I would tell you, receiving the outreach plans, if you can get them in as soon as possible, we can start getting out our grant agreements to you so we can get the funding out immediately. We're asking you do not need to go through the CFA portal like you did around the first time around. We're asking you to send an email directly to us at info@census2020grant.ny.gov. Once again, that's info@census2020grant.ny.gov. We are reviewing. We have a team of people reviewing to get this out. I will tell you that Schuyler County is the first one in, and they should be expecting their grant agreement today. We are looking forward to getting these in. As I said, the due date is August 10th. However, if you need more time or you have it ready, feel free to submit it in. And if you could just do the next slide, just to walk you through how the process works. You have your award letter. If you send in your revised plan and budget, we will get you your grant disbursement agreement. We need to get that signed grant disbursement agreement. And I will also say that please put in your payment requisition form, which includes your bank account information, so that we can wire 90%. So this is a change. It was 70%. Now it's 90% of your funds will come to the county or city. You'll perform the work, you'll submit your report, and then we'll review the report and finalize the last 10% to get to the county or city. We're really looking forward to partnering with you. If you have any questions, once again, please contact us at info@census20.grant.ny.gov. We're here. We're looking forward to seeing your plans and getting the money out as soon as possible. Thank you. And I'll turn it back to you, Mark.
Hi, thank you very much, Pravina. We appreciate your work for New York State at the Empire State Development and your work on the census and your partnership with New York counties. I'm sure that you will be hearing from all of the other counties besides Schuyler who have not yet submitted their information. So congrats to Schuyler for being the first one in, but I'm sure there'll be lots of other emails forthcoming between now and August 10th. I have a number of questions I will go through as quickly as I possibly can. Most of them I think will be toward for New York. I also want to do a quick shout out to Richard Toby and John Majori and Kara Grippin, who are with the governor's office, and we've been working closely with them for the past couple of years on the census and many other issues. So thank you all for joining us this morning. Now for the questions. If you have questions along the way, again, please type them into your question box on the webinar panel. Washington County has the Capital Region United Way on the pre-qualified list. We are partnering with Warren County on the census, and Warren County has Tri-County United Way on the pre-qualified list. Can Washington County use any of the pre-qualified not-for-profits that are on the list, or does the not-for-profit have to be the Washington County specific list? That would be for Pravina.
Yeah, I would assume it's for me. Yes, thanks. If the county is on the pre-approved list, you can use them. So they could use the Warren County approved list as well.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. We are requesting an expert provide a Facebook and Twitter ready posts explaining the importance of the census, why they shouldn't worry about info security, and how to most easily fill it out. Jeff or Rebecca, do you have social media posts that have been pre-created that they can just copy and paste and lift and post?
Absolutely, absolutely. So if you go on our website, again, it's www.hwcli.com, and go under our census work, you'll find lots and lots of social media graphics. We have all sorts of toolkits specific to different demographics. So if you're talking about, fear around completion of census, we have an immigrant leaders toolkit where you'll find all sorts of graphics as well. But we have plenty that we've created, and we really encourage you to use them.
Hey, George, that's a great question. So can anybody, those are for anybody, right? Any legislator, supervisor, or anybody else that can just go on there and post on their Twitter or Facebook accounts, correct?
Yeah, so just to be like 100,000,000% clear, my goal is New York State gets counted and gets counted at 100%. So anything that we've created around census, feel free to lift it, feel free to use it, feel free to make sure that you get an accurate count in your county.
Okay.
And this is Pravina. I would also say we have the same. We have also a toolkit for social media that we're doing through the governor's office. Happy for anyone to take both. It has a whole social media standpoint. So if it's something for Twitter or Facebook, we have also materials that we'd be happy to share as well.
Okay, and Jeff, does the census have also social media material that we can lift and use?
Absolutely. Everything we have out there can be used. We can send you kits via email if you prefer as well. We do have them in multiple languages. And I also would put a plug in that, using what our partners created is a great thing to do. The things Rebecca spoke about are awesome. And New York Counts 2020 also has some really good social media toolkits that you can pull from as well.
Thank you. Many of the hard to count and low response areas lack reliable cell phone coverage and little or no broadband service. What is the process for the enumerator in these circumstances?
Yeah, it's no issue for enumerators. They can work whether they're connected to cell coverage or not on their phone. It's just the data will transmit as soon as they're able to connect shortly thereafter. So it's not an issue for data collection, and also hasn't been an issue for us to be able to host the MQA event. So if that's something that's possible, we would love to bring our staff out there with our iPads, set up a table at a place that people feel comfortable with those trusted voices talking about why it's so important, and we just have resources there to help people to fill it out.
Is the grant funding being paid upfront or is it reimbursable? Thanks, Crystal.
So 90% of the grant funding is being paid upfront and 10% is reimbursable.
Can counties get some of the leftover paper forms? Are there leftover paper forms and can we access them?
Yeah, unfortunately, no. The leftover paper forms that we have will be directly mailed. We'll be, spraying on the address, the census ID, the barcode, all that kind of information, and be mailed directly. We do not have any extra forms that could be given to partners to put in locations of low self-response.
Okay, thank you. How do you plan to reach the communities where they have PO boxes? Community members with PO boxes are saying they have not received any mailings. There are many towns that have areas where a majority of the residents have PO boxes.
Yeah, great question. So in those areas, I would hope they would have been a part of, they should have been a part of the update leave operation. But if anyone has any concerns, what I would suggest is reach out to us, send an email to the partnership link we included in the slides, or give us a call. We have the ability to look up addresses to ensure they're in our master address list. And if not, we add them, because what will happen is we have every address in our list. If we haven't received a response from them, either online, over the phone, or on paper, we will be sending a census taker to their community. And again, I want to throw another pitch in there for mobile questionnaire assistance. We can set up if there's an event going on in that particular community, we can set up an MQA and allow people to come and fill out the census right then and there.
And I want to add to that, if that's okay, Mark. I think it's really important to remember that the Bureau is doing everything that the Bureau can do, but we all have a role to play as well. And as counties, when you make emergency calls or when you provide information to your constituents in varied forms, you have an opportunity to raise up awareness about the census. So folks who are not hearing from the Bureau is going to keep doing what the Bureau can do, but all of us need to participate in making sure we're doing targeted outreach in those communities and in those towns, and finding other ways to reach folks and amplify the message of the importance of completing the census.
Great, thank you. So what do you do if a person does not know whether they completed the census yet? April 1st was a long time ago. It was over 4 months ago. I might have gone on and filled out the form, but I can't remember, or our neighbor can't remember if they filled out the census. How do we know? How does that person find out whether they completed it?
The best thing they can do is, if they have a doubt, to go online and fill it out. We would rather have 2 responses than 0. We have a process at the end of the census that we'll be doing October, November, and December that unduplicates when we receive multiple responses for a single address. So if there's any doubt at all, you can still go online at 2020census.gov or my2020census.gov. You can call one of our toll-free telephone numbers, or if you do have a paper questionnaire still laying around, you can fill it out and mail it back in.
What if a person moved from somewhere to Essex County during COVID-19 and they have not left? Where should they be counted?
So residence criteria requires or suggests you're counted where you usually live or stay as of April 1st, 2020. So this is, one of the big issues we're having right now is with college students who live, in a community off campus. Even though they left before April 1st, and they finished the rest of the semester maybe out at their parents' house, according to the residence criteria, they should be counted where they usually live or stay as of April 1st, which would have been that off-campus apartment complex. And it's important that we not only count everyone once and only once, but in the right place. So in the event, again, you got to go back to where you usually live or stay as of April 1st.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. How about ready to edit articles and letters to the editor? Are those also part of the toolkits that are out there?
So our COVID-19 census toolkit has, I think, about 5 or 7 letters to the editor that can be, lifted and signed by anyone on this call.
Okay, great. We're approaching 11 o'clock. I'm going to keep going through these questions until we can get answers to as many as possible. If you need to sign off, please do so. This will be recorded and be made available to everybody afterwards. But I just wanted to let you know, and I appreciate the presenters staying on the line to answer these questions. A question for Pravina from the county planners. Can admin fees go through October 31st to cover project closeout reporting?
I need to look into that. I will get back to NYSAC, and if you want to let me know the county, I will also get back to them directly. I get what you're saying because we closed it out on the 30th. Let me just go back to our legal staff, but I think it should be possible, but I want to confirm that.
Yeah, just so you know, Pravina, we've gotten that call from multiple, or that question from multiple companies. So regarding the 25%, do we have restrictions on how this is used?
Yes, it would have to be for the eligible expenses. So all those categories that I blew through really quickly, those are all eligible for the county. If they have a expense that they want to look at that isn't on the ineligible, I think it's probably, if it's not on the ineligible, we'll probably consider it. But if it's something like alcohol or other things that are not on the ineligible list, I would say put it in your budget. We're going to be reviewing these budgets quickly, so you'll get a call back if we have a question.
Okay. Can we use the personnel cost line for not-for-profits that aren't New York State approved?
No. If you're going to be working with a New York, a non-for-profit has to be on the approved list.
Okay. I would like to confirm that given the 75%, 25% split to nonprofit, that it is okay to have the nonprofit hire a marketing or social media firm for outreach to support the outreach.
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
It's an eligible expense. Yes, 100%.
Is the revised proposal being run through the CFA? You already answered that. Is not being run through the CFA.
No,
right?
You can just send us a mail directly to the in-mail box that the letter has. But again, it's info@census2020grant.ny.gov.
Is the 25-75 division of funds based on the amount awarded or the amount actually spent? If we spend over 25% and the not-for-profit doesn't complete all their activities and do not fully expend the 75%, will we be penalized and have to refund monies to the state?
No, so it is based on the award allocation. So for example, if you got a $100,000 award, 25% of that is $25,000. And the other 75,000 goes to the nonprofit. Say the nonprofit only spent 50,000, you can still spend the $25,000. So it is based on the allocation amount, not on the amount that's finally spent. But I will say, if we give you 100,000 and you only spend 75,000, the nonprofit only spends, in that example, the 50 out of the 75. We expect that other 25,000 to be returned.
Okay, it's not a penalty, but the county doesn't get the additional 25,000.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, how will this, okay, I got that. Can counties fund any CBOs that were not on the list the state provided each county but who were submitted by the counties in January.
No, it would, I assume they're talking about the nonprofit list.
Yeah, CBO
Is ever on the,
communication, nonprofit.
yeah, so I just say, it has to be an approved nonprofit that's on the list that has been sent out.
Okay, we would like to confirm that given the 75-25% split, that it is okay to have qualified nonprofit hire. Yeah, we have that question done. Sorry. What are the other promotion items allowed? For example, could we print bags to create kits with PPE?
Yeah, I mean, it is for PPP
yeah.
and getting it out. Yeah, yeah. Yes.
Okay.
To get the PPE out, yes. I know someone's going to ask me if they can do fireworks. I'm just letting you know that's a hard no.
Okay. Are COVID keys?
We got that last round. Yeah.
COVID keys tools eligible? Yeah. So COVID keys or tools eligible as a promotion item. Not sure what that means.
I'm not sure. I would say anything that is like, you know, that protects the health and safety of both the population, to make sure, you know, hand sanitizer, gloves, masks, that is all considered protective equipment and is eligible.
So this might be just an FYI, but what if our nonprofit expenses can't reach the 75% level because of the lateness of the game here? Some of our nonprofits have indicated they cannot meet the revised timeline, and they can't. So they decided no longer to participate.
So if all the nonprofits on the list have decided to not participate, who have been on the approved list, please let us know immediately so that we can try to identify others. But so we would need to know that, because as indication was those would all still be willing to do the work. But if you have a nonprofit that you're working with that's on the list and says, I can't do it, please let us know, and we'll try to figure out another nonprofit that can be substituted in.
What is the turnaround time for the email? How soon can we expect approval from ESD?
If we get, I will tell you, we're trying to do it within 24 to 36 hours. It depends. I mean, I assume that majority of people are coming in August 10th, so probably need 2 days, and then you'll get an email out with your grant agreement. Once we get that signed back, the money we need 24 hours to get the money out.
Do we have to submit a new GDA and payment requisition form if we've already submitted one in the winter?
We did not receive any GDAs or requisition forms in the winter, so yes, you would have to do one, because we never sent any out.
Okay, good.
So
once a plan is state approved, what is the timing of receiving the check for the 90% in funds? I think you just answered that, but.
Yeah, so as soon as we can get your GDA back, we should be able to get the funds to you in 24 to 36 hours.
Are these grants open to nonprofits for counties without a complete count committee? So if a county doesn't have a complete count committee, are the grants still available and open to the nonprofits in those counties?
Yes, so yes, so each county, even if it did not have a complete count committee, has a list of nonprofits that have been approved. Those nonprofits are eligible to work with the county on their plans without, even if there's no non-committee. Yeah.
And the emails you said are due the Monday the 10th, correct?
That's correct. Yes.
Is there a time? Is it midnight on Monday or 11:59 on Monday the 10th?
Yeah, it's 5 p.m. But just so that we can start working. But if you get it at 11:59 p.m., we'll still take it.
Okay, can you do that one more time? Because I think we lost you.
Oh, sure. I said it is 5 p.m., but if you get it on the 10th, even at 11:59 p.m., we will take it.
Okay.
Did you hear me?
Is it 2575 division of funds? Yes, thank you. Okay. A few more here. I appreciate your patience. Is the date to get budget back Monday? Okay, got that. Do we have suggestions for reaching the pre-K cohort? Do you have suggestions for reaching the pre-K cohort?
So this is Rebecca. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Go ahead, Rebecca.
I was going to say, so if you go on our website, again, www.hwcli.com, one of the working groups that we worked with for over a year were early childhood leaders, because children 0 to 5 have been historically undercounted in the census. And there are lots of ideas listed in there about how to make sure that young children are counted, and how to sort of combat some of the concerns and some of the reasons why folks often don't count their young children. So please feel free to use that toolkit to get information about how to make sure young children in your county are counted.
Okay.
I'd like to
so
just mention one other resource. If I could just quickly mention one other resource, Statistics in Schools, at the 2020census.gov. You can just search for Statistics in Schools. A lot of great activities. There are things typically K through 12, but a lot of the activities, the K1 and 2, can be used, to help both educate the parents as well as have a fun activity for the kids.
Great, thank you. So George, again, this is a great idea. Can you all send me your links to where people can get, where our members can access the material, and we will send it out to everybody who's on this call and county leaders from across the state, so that they can access this material and copy and use it in their own community. So that's a great idea, George. We will do that. He said it appears that New York Counts 2020, you need to be a partner with login access to get those materials. That may be true, George, but we can get you materials from Rebecca's organization and from the census and from the state, and we will get that material out to everybody who's on this call. And one more, due to the rural nature of our communities, if we cannot put together a budget for the full award, is it 75-25 of the budget provided or the full amount? We already have that answer. Okay, and that will do it for our questions. One more, might not have to print bags if there are still Census 2020 Canvas swag bags available. That was, I guess, a statement. So thank you all for joining us. I want to thank our presenters one more time. Pravina Raghavan from the Empire State Development, Rebecca Sannon from Long Island Health and Human Services Council, and Jeff Baylor from the US Census. Thank you, and thank you to Jeanette Stanziano, the NYSAC Director of Education and Training, for putting this webinar together. Be well, be safe, be healthy. We will check back in with more census information by email. Thank you.